Good morning, REC Nation. Welcome to the Brunch with REC. I think this has now been my 10th or 11th live Brunch with REC that I've hosted. I always find myself introducing myself, so I'm just going to keep it going. It's good luck, I guess. We've had great discussions this year so far. So my name is Tyler. I am a member of REC Canada. I am in our real estate coaching division. With Jazz and Simeon, created the real estate concierge division where we help all of our REC insiders find the right service providers, the right contractors, cleaners, mortgage brokers, you name it. And it's very timely to bring that up because today we have a very special guest. Her name is Elaine, and Elaine is one part of a fantastic investment team, and she handles more of the customer relations, the tenant relations, as well as the vendor screening and the vendor searches itself. So I wanted to bring Elaine on to really talk about that customer relations side of things. It's easy to work with someone and to run numbers and to try and attempt to find the right income property, but working with an all-star team, finding the right tenants, screening properly, these are really important things, very important parts of the process of being an investor, especially when you're working with hands-on opportunities like the single-family homes, the duplexes, the multifamily opportunities, and not putting these types of due diligence checks in place or not having the right team members, depending on what happens in your portfolio, could make or break the investment. And I'm really happy that Elaine has joined me today. And Nikki, if you don't mind just bringing Elaine on the screen. Elaine, hello. Thank you so much for joining the Brunch with REC.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How's your morning so far? Are you getting ready for the holidays?
Avoiding the holidays, yeah. So yeah, nice. I am not one of those people who has had the time or interest to do any.
I think you'll be proud of me. We've actually already got the big Christmas present out of the way for the girls. So that was good. We saw a sale online, like through one of the random email blasts that I get a lot of. And so we got that. But other than that, I think we still have our pumpkins up for Halloween. So I'm also not ready for Christmas.
Yeah. Thankfully, Jack is now out of that age group. So it's like a one and done big ticket item. But yeah, I've been known to be very delayed with putting up my Christmas tree and taking it down. It wouldn't be I will confess I have had it up as late as St. Patrick's Day one year.
Well, you know what? It just makes St. Patrick's Day a lot more fun then.
Sure.
It's more festive. You got the Christmas tree around.
Yeah.
So Elaine, again, welcome to the Brunch with REC. I did a little bit of an introduction, but you with Brian make a fantastic investment team. And I've personally known you pretty much the whole time I've been with REC for about 8 years now. And, before I go into a few showing stories and a few things that I can remember when we saw some income properties that you still own, how did you hear about REC? How did you learn about us?
We learned of REC through Keyspire is how we came into.
Great group. And we just did we were just at a summit a few weeks ago, about a month ago.
Yeah, so it was at an investors summit that we met you and Simon at a booth.
Yeah.
Or no, first it was Simon. We would go to Keyspire would put on all these
the mastery events, like the 90-day events.
Or not even, well, that too. We did all of that. So Keyspire is a big part of our story. But we got to know Simon first because he would do these monthlies, kind of market analysis type of things.
Yep.
And and then we reached out to him to do some number crunching, and that was it. That was the birth of our relationship with REC.
And it kind of starts like that, right? It's having a need, like seeing a need in your portfolio, and I really like the way that you. And we'll touch on it a little bit on how you grew your real estate portfolio just from your primary residence and building that really stable foundation, and then you picking right markets and investing there, and we'll touch base. But it's great to see, and it always starts with just one conversation, and I'm happy that the universe brought us together. Let's call that serendipity, and we were able to help you achieve some of those successes in your portfolio.
Yeah, we're running in parallel, your story and our story. We started at the same time that you started. So Yeah.
So the story with myself, for everyone listening who might not know, and REC, I started off as Simeon, Jazz, and Simon, one of our partners that unfortunately has passed away, but I started off as their assistant. And a lot of my day was just running around, running performers on properties. And I love that because it really gave me a good foundation where I am now with analyzing opportunities, but also just doing general calls and finding out what you needed in your portfolio. And once I got my real estate license and I started to be more of a buyer's agent, going out for showings, Elaine and Brian were one of the first investors I actually did show properties with. And I remember with one of your income properties, we saw a bunch of homes. Do you remember that? We went to Durham is your main area of focus at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to, it has to be over 20 homes. Remember, like we pretty much tore up Whitby and Oshawa at that time, and some of Pickering.
We clocked some miles, and it wasn't only you. Poor Marlene put a lot of miles in with us as well.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have a team that way, right? And
that's what it takes,
It does. It takes a village to build a real estate portfolio.
It totally does.
And we saw properties from rehab opportunities, ones that needed work. We found some turnkey opportunities. I think at that time you were more focused because you were just getting into buying I think at that time it was your second income property, first to second income property, and you were focused more on cash flow positive duplexes. Right?
Yeah. And we kind of we ended up being the accidental investors. Was how we kind of started. So back in 2008, I believe it was, we wanted to sell our first home.
Yep.
And we couldn't get the price that we wanted for it. So someone suggested, our realtor at the time suggested, why don't you put it up for sale or lease? And we were like, oh, do we want to get into tenants and toilets? And the thought was, no way would we qualify to carry two properties. So no way. But we had the conversation. So stay curious and have conversations is two big tips that I want to put out there. So we had the conversation, and then we found out that it is possible and we would qualify. So then we started looking at it seriously, and we had it on for sale and or lease. And we said we'd see what would come first and if it was doable. And lease came up first. That's what won the race. And then that started us off.
Yeah. And you also got your toes in you put your toes in the water first before you actually really jumped into investing, and you bought so you moved out of that primary residence, you rented it out, but you still lived very close to that property.
Yeah.
So it gave you the ability to keep your eye on it too, right? And I would imagine that helped the decision with keeping it.
Yeah, we didn't really see ourselves as investors. Investors wasn't even a word on our radar yet. So we were just landlords, which I think a lot of people do. They have one other one. However, they acquire the other one and they just do the landlording. And so they consider themselves landlords versus investors. But it wasn't, we were about 20 houses down the road. And we're still in that house today. So that house we are still in. And it wasn't then until we were in this house for a little bit, and a little show some may be familiar with, Income Properties with Scott McGilvery. We became fans of that show. And then, so we got curious. And then Brian just ran the numbers one day on our rental property and was shocked at the appreciation it's had and what we've made. And so then we started looking at income properties with a different lens. And then we got curious and we started asking questions. And we went to the one-day Keyspire thing with Scott.
Yeah,
it wasn't even promoted as Keyspire. I think it was just with Scott. So
so it was like a welcome weekend afterwards, right?
Yeah, so it went from a one day, and it was full of women who just wanted to see Scott. So he was the big draw with his nice hair.
Yeah.
And then they did
I got to grow out my hair a little bit.
Well, just age gracefully. No need.
Okay. I'll make sure to put some face cream on here and there. Some sunscreen. I'll put some sunscreen on.
There you go.
And then after that, you then just started connecting with investors, and I think a lot of communities that have real estate investors, as their main focus, or growing through real estate as an investment outlet. It's a really good community, right? And I find the right people are the ones that want to work with you. They're okay with talking about their challenges, talking about some of the mistakes, just in hope that you also might not make that mistake when it does come, time to potentially hit that crossroad, right? And it's really good that we do work with so many investors, and that we have a community here that we can leverage from. Like, I leverage from your path of investing. James Rocondo, I had him last time as a guest with our Brunch with REC, and everybody has a different strategy, but it's all about taking bits and pieces, I find anyways, from other people's plans and just apply it to the way that it works for you. And for you, it the snowball effect after you decided to rent out that your private residence, move into your second home, and still hold your original primary residence. Things started to snowball when it comes to appreciation.
Yeah.
And that's how it happens, right? The first one's the hardest.
Yeah. And it's hard to get going. And at these events, and, and as you network, they encourage the networking. And, if you are a shyer type, it is a bit difficult to be, having these conversations, but it's amazing how willing people are who are investing or already do it, are happy to share, because they know how valuable the information is or was to them, or they wish they would have known before. So have the conversations, get into the room. First of all, so if you're considering investing and still just on the fence, just get into the room, stay curious, get into the room, hear the conversations, then start opening your mouth and networking. That's the best way. And then you just hear more stories, you learn more. And just get a seat at the table, and don't be afraid to ask a question or share your own story. You never know what'll come out from whoever.
You never know.
Yeah. And then even if you are investing, we've had some great referrals from fellow members that we've gone to one of your events or bumped into along the way.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a recommendation of this, that, or the other? And you get some great referrals and vendors that way as well.
Yeah, and that's one big piece of what you do, with you and Brian, right? You do vendor relations, and you're one of your main focuses is you're assembling your all-star team, and it's great that you brought that up, because I did want to ask you, who is included in your all-star team? Like, what are some of these service providers that you'd recommend other investors have?
Oh, you're gonna. So the main team is Brian and I have to give a shout out to his dad and and our family in general. It does take a village, and so our immediate village has been so helpful in carrying all the properties that we have, whether it's painting a wall, or Brian's dad is really a handyman for us. So key. So having some sort of handyman, or we have property managers at various properties. So we have a couple of those relationships. Our mortgage broker, Michael, he's been amazing. He did amazing work, which we got through an REC alum, Stephen. You had him on a couple of weeks ago. So he put us in touch with him. I can't remember the company Michael's with, but if anybody wants to know who an amazing mortgage broker, ping us and we'll let you know. I'll get you his information. And then I would say my biggest asset and ally is REC, and you and Jazz and Simeon. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to come on today. And I'm sure maybe your audience is already aware. That's why they are on. But if anybody's having any doubts, you'll be in good hands with REC. Any questions that we have, or needs or worries along our path, you guys are always kind of like our go-tos to touch base with, and either help us make a decision or put us in touch with somebody. So the depth of knowledge and resources you have and are always so generous to share is a key win for us in our story.
I truly think of all of our REC insiders, including especially you and Brian, as part of our extended family at REC. And I really mean this, Elaine. Every time you call me, I try my best to pick up, or at least to respond to you, because what I do, and I'm very fortunate of being in the position that I am, is to help, right? Mm-hmm. It's at the end of the day, there's never any obligation to have to transact with us. And I think Jazz and Simeon have done a great job of allowing me to be in this position, and not really have to focus too much, because we are realtors, about transactions. and instead I can just bring value. And I'm happy that you have gotten value over the years there. It's
100%.
It all starts with the calls, right? And reaching out, and that's why I want to make sure myself and our real estate concierge division especially, and Alistair is one of the associates there. I'm just looking at his desk, so I see his Paul George bobblehead right there, and that we are easy to connect with, and I hope everyone at REC feels that as well, as our REC insiders. And if anyone does need any assistance through our concierge division, you can reach out to us. We're really easy. You can send us an email at info@REC-Canada. I would like to hope that I've probably spoken to almost every single person that is an REC insider at this point. So I hope I did a good enough job where you say my cell phone, because I call from my cell phone. You can text me as well.
Yeah.
So the property managers, because that is a big one that people do need, especially as you grow your portfolio a little bit. And even if you stay close to home where you can actually drive to these properties, but you just don't have enough time in the day to fully manage all of the occurrences that could come up in properties, even like snow removal and lawn care, let's call it. And the property managers that you work with, what's the typical fee structure? Like, what's the typical questions you ask them in regards to services? Like, what do you look for in a property manager?
I look for somebody that I can have. One of the key things to me is having an open and honest relationship and understanding of what they provide and what we're looking for, to see if we have a good fit that way. Yep. So, we've been through some that didn't work out. And so even if it's a referral or, even if it's a referral, like vet them as best as you can, because talk is cheap.
I find that property managers over any other service provider are the ones that you can screen and you could do your best, but until you start working with them, that's when you know what work they actually produce. Mm-hmm. And it's a little different with contractors, right? Because contractors can show you their portfolio, and you can see kind of initially when they walk around the house for contractors, their eye for it, things that they recommend. You can kind of see that if they know what they're talking about. Whereas with property management, it's a little difficult. It's a little different. You have to actually, you have to wine and dine sometimes, right? And you have to really feel it out before you know if it's the right fit, right relationship.
Yeah. Like we've had experiences where, a lot of property managers have all the bells and whistles and tools and, a flashy website, and it looks great. But honestly, my best relationship with a property manager is just a husband and wife at our vacation property, who we just have a real relationship with, and that works for us. Yeah. So that is honestly the best property manager relationship I have. I also have a relationship with a property manager. He doesn't actually manage all of our property, but the one in Waterloo at our student rental. So we have a relationship there for just repairs, because we are in the east end of Toronto, and we're in Durham. So obviously Waterloo is a bit far. So for certain things we coordinate through them. So I don't have a full service or membership with them. In regards to the vacation property manager, they get a percentage of
the gross rent, right?
Of the booking, yeah, just the
booking. Yeah, exactly. So do they handle also, because property managers are even different for your traditional tenancy and the short-term rental, and usually I find anyways with the fees with traditional property managers, they kind of range from 8 to 12% of your gross rent is what they take, whereas with short-term rentals, because it includes check-in, cleaning, and a little bit more when it comes to potential hands-on work, like something could happen with the tenants. I rented an Airbnb, and this is a few years back, and we had, because we were using the oven and the stove, the power went out, and we called the property manager that was there, and they were on site very quickly. And I find you have to do a little bit more of that hands-on property management work with short-term rentals, so they charge a bigger fee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we want as owners, but not all property managers would go into that level. So I've had to rotate through property managers at our vacation property, because the ones I have now will go do that. He's down the road, he pops in. It's like having your dad come over and the oven's gone. Whereas the other property management company, yes, slicker, bigger, loads of things, loads of properties on his books, but getting them to come out on the fly is not so much. So again, you have to do what works for you.
A good question that we ask when we're screening property managers is the amount of doors that they manage and the amount of staff that they have. And I think, it also depends on the type. Like if they're just managing condos, that's a little different. But yeah, so it's really good. It's really important. And I find out of all service providers, that's probably the hardest one for me anyways, to find the diamond in the rough, right? And it's I do find the smaller ones are sometimes, if they have experience, are the ones that I lean towards as well, which is why you look at options.
Yeah, that's why you need to really have it's about building relationships and being able and having people skills to suss people out. And if you can get past clients of theirs that were either successful or they're no longer as much, again, vetting, just like a tenant, you got to vet them just as well.
Yep, that's right.
And then the second point is then stay close. Don't stay close to them, and you do have to manage them, even because there's nothing worse than you assumed, and then down the road you're like, oh, when you start asking them the hard questions, you're like, that's on me that I didn't stay close and ask a lot of questions. So we've been burned by that for sure.
Yeah, and it's all about just the only way to know some questions though is just by doing it as well, right? Experience is your best teacher, as they say. So from and I'm jumping back, so from your first property, because my question's on the tenant search process, but from your first property that you ended up, keeping and renting out, from that, like, where are you now in regards to the number of doors that you do manage in your portfolio?
Doors, because a couple of them are duplexes. We have, including our primary residence, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I wrote them down. 6, 7, 8, 8, 8, and 2 of them are duplexes.
And sometimes you just put your head down, and isn't that amazing? Like you're just working hard in your portfolio, and you look up, you're like, well, from 1 turn to 8, and that's amazing. Just building the foundation is really important. And the reason why I asked that, you now have a lot of experience with the tenant search process.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your, if you were to manage the rental itself in finding the tenant, what is that typical process that you see?
Well, I do for most of them.
Yep.
Get the tenants myself. So sometimes, depending on the property, it goes on MLS with you and or a property manager or you guys. So that, or I do like Kijiji and or any other rental type of, and on any of all, like Zumper, and I put it on as much of those platforms that I can obviously do myself. And then I field all the questions, and then I have an online application that I get people to put in, and I ask them for the documentation. But the real work, that's easy. There's lots of tire kickers, right? And for the student rental, I only use Facebook Marketplace, and the amount of activity I get in there, but there's a whole lot of tire kickers there. But the real work comes in then when you're trying to vet them. So you ask the
important work for sure.
Totally. But even then you can get burned. But you do your best to get as much documentation and to verify the documentation. So if they give you an employment letter, that's great, but you follow up with the employer or the business, not necessarily just the number or the phone number and the person that they gave you, because let's be honest.
I Google search everything on the application. Like every single
You're a stalker. You're like a bad ex-girlfriend. You're figuring out everything you can.
I feel like I'm in an 80s action movie as a hacker, just like putting my glasses on, just like just gonna go find everything about you. But you have to screen first, right? Because it's important. Once the tenancy is accepted and you've accepted the first and last month's deposit, or the last month's deposit, and then they move in, a lot of rights are leaned towards more the tenants compared to the landlords, right?
100%.
So us as landlords, just we have to be careful, and we have to do our due diligence there. And in regards to websites, so I just rented out my condo in London. We just got new tenants moving in on the 1st of December, and I put it on. I find over the past few years, Kijiji, when I first started about 8 years ago, was the spot. Kijiji was where you would find all of your tenants, and a lot of qualified tenants. MLS obviously as well, but Facebook Marketplace and PadMapper are the two that I also put on Kijiji, but I got I got maybe 2 inquiries on Kijiji.
Yeah.
I probably got about 20 a day on Facebook Marketplace, and PadMapper as well is good. I got a few there.
Yeah, Kijiji's kind of died out, and that'll happen. But again, it's good. That's why it's good to have conversations and listen in what is working, what is the new trend.
Yeah.
Some other tips and tricks we used to do, like when we're showing the properties, I'd show the properties like an open house for a short window. When I first started, people would message me. I was running back and forth to houses, and then nobody shows. Oh my God, the amount of no shows. So I now
so many no shows.
So many no shows. So now I book it like an open house as if I was selling it, and that's helpful then because it creates a buzz and people who are looking, it starts to create a bit of urgency with them, but it just saves your time. And then some other kind of tips and tricks we learned along the way. Once you have a candidate that you want to consider, do a drive-by of their house, because everybody tells me they're a gardener. Oh, I love gardening. Is it okay if I plant my own flowers? Absolutely. And you go by their house and it's like, no, you're not a gardener anyway. You maybe see lots of other things. And then like another one, asking them to see if you can come by. There was a piece of one of the part of the application that you forgot to get them to sign out. Can I come over and just get you to sign it so that you can maybe get a peek in the door? And you get to see how flexible they are as a person to work with when you do have a question. So for us, relationship is really, really important because we want them to enjoy the home and enjoy the relationship with us, because there is some back and forth, whatever it may be. And if they do have a problem with say they can't pay their rent, not a problem, just let us know. So we want to make sure that they're good communicators and open people, that kind of way, because life happens.
You want to create a partnership. And that's exactly what you're touching on, and it's so important. And they have to feel comfortable to talk to you about things. Any damages, anything. The sooner that us as yourself as an investor and landlord goes and tackles whatever problem it is with the house, usually the more cost effective it is as well. The more you let things sit, the more costly it is.
100%. Yeah. And again, you want them to be able to tell you that the shower's leaking, so that, they don't tell you when it's fallen apart and you have like $1,000 job versus
or it leaks into, the shower's upstairs, it leaks into right under the tub and it drips down into the living room. So one other thing that I probably would recommend doing for all landlords who are looking for new prospective tenants is, getting their current place of residence is important, and getting the landlord reference there, but do the one prior as well if you can. The one before. They're usually a little bit more accurate.
100%.
Because sometimes it's a landlord that's selling, they need to leave, so they'll try and sugarcoat everything just so the tenant will leave. Whereas the person that actually doesn't accept rent from the tenants at that point anymore, they'll give you a more realistic idea.
I asked for 3. I asked for your 2. I asked for 3. So your last one and then 2 prior. Sometimes they don't have them, or they say they don't have them. So
another good one is the rental application. Having them provided is great. If for whatever reason, anyone listening, yourself included, Elaine, you already know this, but if anybody needs a credit report done, all we need is the tenants in writing, just acceptance that they do allow us to pull their credit. You let us know, we'll be able to do it. We have a great platform that can pull credit, and it's accurate. It's from TransUnion.
Yeah, and even just making that request to the applicant tells you a lot, whether they're forthcoming with it. And and I always say, and everybody has a story, and especially depending on where the area of your rental is. I always say, I'm not looking for a perfect credit score. Look, everybody's got a story or a reason. So it's about, are they transparent enough or well? So, that's the big part of it. Even so much of the score. It takes a whole picture. You have to take the whole picture into account, when you're looking at them.
And let's say there was some delinquency, so someone's in their 40s, there's some delinquency when they're in their 20s, 25, 27. You can bring it up and talk to them about it. It's like, oh, I noticed that there was, a claim against your credit at this time. What happened? Like, what was this resolved? Let's talk about it. And it's about working with people, but it's understanding who they are, and having that transparency is very important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, they're paying off your mortgage, a good chunk of it, anyways. So
yeah, it depends on your risk level as well. Like what you are able to manage and withhold if or sustain if they can't pay, or do you have the time to manage them to that degree? So it is a little bit different for everybody. So you have to kind of take into account where you're at and what you're capable of and the scope you have to manage.
What about, because you do own a few duplexes, so you're managing 2 tenants in the same property, 2 or more tenants at the same property. Like, what do you do creating like more of a community there? Do you do anything with that, or do you try to?
I try to match them as best as I can.
Yeah.
But I also make it quite clear that I'm nobody's parent and nobody's referee. And that I manage within what I am allowed to manage versus what I'm not. So, any common spaces, there's rules in regards to, like I had to put a schedule into one of them when they could use the laundry room, what part of storage. So sometimes you have to get into that, but.
And you did that, I would imagine, after some challenges came up.
Yeah, lessons learned. Like you learn these little tricks along the way. So as much as you want to build a relationship, you also need to have boundaries, because it's really important, because sometimes the more you give, the more that keeps getting taken.
And the more that's it's expected too.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to complaints, you'd be there all day. Sometimes, like, you think you match 2 people up as best as possible in regards to lifestyles and what's going on. But it doesn't work out for whatever reasons. And then you could get sucked into being a huge complaint department. If it's within, if they're impeding on the enjoyment of the home, then for sure. And we've had to go down that route and ended up in LTB a couple of times.
And did you do that yourself, or did you work with a paralegal?
Both. Once we started the processes by ourselves, but then as it got trickier, we took in a paralegal to help us execute that. And then the other one we started on our own, but they ended up leaving before we got to the date that we for the conviction or the eviction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I don't a lesson learned. I nobody's parent, nobody's referee. And if it's within the guidelines of what I am legally able to take action on, I will. Otherwise, it's just like being in an apartment building that I maybe don't, I'm not responsible for apartment, whatever. You're in a space that's cohabiting with other people. You have to be expectant and be mindful of it.
Yeah. And then like, do you have like parts of the backyard for, one tenant, and then like the front yard for the other tenants? Like, do you do that, or is it just kind of common area?
We try to stay away from that, and we give exclusive use, and then thereby
to the upstairs
tenant.
Yeah.
Just to avoid these situations, the last thing I want is to be dealing with they're having a party in the backyard or they wouldn't let our friends in or whatever. So I try and limit and as much as possible to avoid that and just nip it in the bud.
Yeah, that's great. And then in regards to the tenants themselves, I think it's just being transparent again with the common area, what you expect from them, and ask them, like, as a landlord, I'm here to work with you. Like, is there something that your previous landlords could have done better? And just learning there that way, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as you have grown, from one door, you said there was 8 doors. 8 doors,
8 including our primary residence. Yeah.
What is what's next? Like, what types of opportunities are you looking for now?
Well, that's an interesting story or an interesting question, because I don't really have an answer. We're kind of, since we started, our careers have changed and our capacity has changed. Our handyman is not as available. We are not as available now to do what the handyman did. So And we're kind of just now focusing on next stage of life as well. So we are, and you learn along the way, we are looking to sell our vacation property. At this stage, our careers are too busy and we don't have the resources, and the farmhouse is too far away for us to enjoy and or manage. So Airbnb is not for us at this point. We're too, multiple tenants every week and weekend was more than I want and I can't take on at this point. It's a great opportunity. If anybody is on the call or the live this morning that's interested in a vacation property in wine country, give Tyler a call.
Here, we'll here, Nikki, I'll put in. Nikki, just put that info at REC Canada email there. Yeah, if anyone is interested in some potential, cash flowing positive short-term rental opportunities, I could definitely send a listing over, Elaine.
Yeah, so we're looking to move some things, but then also maybe we're starting to talk with our financial advisor, which is also an important person in your team. We've crunched numbers with Simeon recently to see, do we want to maybe go into a multifamily, start, pushing our investments to into like going to a multifamily building.
Yeah, instead of multiple doors in areas, put it together into one kind of thing.
Yeah. Or do we want to go down more passive routes?
Or both, right? Yeah, like the ones like the REIT style investments, especially if you can pay out in dividends monthly, it could help offset. As you transition into a new stage in your life, it's perfect, right? You can still make some month-to-month income as well. Your money's still working for you.
Yeah, so that's the agent stage that we're at. So we're having those conversations. Like some people on the live this morning are nowhere near thinking about, retirement. I'm perhaps maybe being a bit ambitious, thinking as early as I am, but it's all part of planning and strategy, so you kind of need to know.
I find motivation so important, right? And finding the right motivation or understanding because we do real estate action plan discussions with investors. I had 11 this week, and building plans for 2023 with our REC insiders. One of my main focuses on the initial call, Elaine, is just to understand what motivation, what is your big why of investing and where you are in your life. What are you trying to get out of investing? Like, if you could wave a magic wand. And I would say you get two main motivational factors that I speak with investors. And the main one is, they want to transition out of their typical 9 to 5, and they find that real estate is the way to potentially do that. And they're not at the stage yet of doing it, but they want to, at least in the next 10 years, make the right decisions now, especially if you can still get a mortgage. And with up to 9 to 5, it's a little bit harder. And trying to find laddering the right investments at the time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we kind of it is. You got to know your business. You have to know your numbers, and don't be afraid to constantly have the question. And it's good to have a plan and your motivation. Know what your why for wanting it, or for those who are yet to pull the trigger, why not? Like what's the reasons behind there? And again, is like stay curious and ask the questions. Like sometimes you'll be so afraid that you have an assumed outcome. We can't do that because of this. Ask the question and find out the answer. You never know. There's so many creative solutions, and that's one big aha moment in the real estate education. Is there so many options? It's not just about tenants and toilets, because that I think is probably the most unattractive of the options. But
it's the most hands-on too.
Yeah. So a lot of people, just don't want to be a landlord, but there are so many other options that you can do.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of looking at what are those, and maybe is it time for us to go down more of those.
Yeah. Well, you have such a good foundation. You can leverage from one of the properties, and you can pull out X amount of dollars and then put it into ones like Equiton or Greybrook, and it has your money working for you. And sure, especially with Greybrook or land development, your money is set there for the whatever term it is, but at least it's still working for you. And it's a savings.
Yeah, like we have a Greybrook deal as well. So
yeah.
But again, that's the value of knowing REC and getting into that room and or at that Keyspire with that at that table or in that room, and meeting all these people and learning all of these things. So stay curious, ask questions, network. And then if you ever need help to execute, so many resources available to you.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, again, we do have a real estate concierge division. It doesn't cost you anything, to reach out to me to, build that plan that I was talking about, to, try to find the right property manager, contractor, cleaner, mortgage broker, you name it. Reach out to me, reach out to great investors like Elaine and Brian. Honestly, I think everyone, I said it already, everyone in the real estate community that we work with anyways, maybe it's just who we attract. It's, people want to help others. And, especially, seeing the growth. I personally have witnessed the growth from when you made the decision to, to move, to rent out that property to where you are now. And Elaine, you and Brian are doing great. And, we truly do value your support. And I love that I was able to take the passenger seat and really see the growth. I'm so happy for you guys.
You're in the back seat, passenger seat, front seat.
I'm in the back.
Depending on the scenario, you're in all the seats at some point.
I'll hold on the roof. I'll hold on to the roof.
You're along for the ride all the way. That's all I know. So Tyler, I appreciate you, and
thank you.
Jazz and Simeon. Again, can't speak highly enough. Always there, and do always deliver, even if the cleaner you recommended or whatever doesn't work out for you or whoever.
It happens.
There's another one. There's another one, and you always answer the call, and you're always there. So I can't. And that's more than a lot of places. Again, talk is cheap, but you guys deliver. And I think that's what you teach as well. And like all the, the broker playbook or Jazz's stuff on social, how he's encouraging agents to be and offer that value and value for free. I couldn't, as a consumer, that's what I love and why I'm loyal to REC, is because the value is there and they deliver on what's promised, and they're there with you all the way.
Yeah. One mentality that they have, and it's so nice to see, and I have it now too, but I've been cultivated by Jazz and Simi. It's all I know, is not being gatekeepers of the value of the services, not being gatekeepers of the education. It's just letting things go, and if you can get value from it, and I hope people listening today did get a little bit of value from our discussion, or a lot of value from our discussion. That's great. That's why we do it. If not, that's okay. At least you joined us. And even all of the real estate action plan calls, I would say like 80% of the discussions that we have, doesn't really actually, create, an investment opportunity, purchase or sale or whatever the transaction is. Most of the time, it's just finding out where you are as an investor, and then just creating these initial plans. And that's my favorite part of the day now. Is when I come into the morning, we get here at around 8:30, and I just look at my calendar, see how many real estate action plan discussions I have for the day. And this week's been busy with the new year, the changes in the market, obviously, as well. Investors just, trying to make sure that they have the right pieces in play to make sure that they strive for success. So, or they're growing it properly.
Yeah.
Elaine, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to speak with you. I know we'll have many conversations off of the Brunch with REC moving forward. And for everyone listening, if you need anything, if you'd like to see the short-term rental opportunity, even if you just want to crunch some numbers, I try to crunch at least, I try to run about 5 performance a day, and I think everybody should do that just for experience and to get reps in. Send us an email. We can send you over the listing. We can send you over the performa, just so you can take a look over it. Elaine, thanks again. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy your weekend.
Yours. Yeah.
And
get back
hopefully,
to the party.
Yeah, I know. Well, right now, for everyone who did not, I only spoke to Elaine about it. So
sorry.
For everybody else, the kids are at the office right now with my wife, and we're taking pictures with Santa. So I'm gonna go out and take some more pictures.
Cute. Okay.
Enjoy the weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Brunch with REC. Bye, everyone.